Welcome, everyone, to the dance floor, where life lessons are learned through the art of dance. I'm your host, Anna Harsh, and today I have two special guests with me, Anthony Taddeo and Amanda Powell. Welcome to the dance floor, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Guys, I want you to tell our listeners the name of your band.
The name of the band is Alla Boara.
Alla Boara. And what does that mean?
So that is a term that is used to denote a type of folk song, in particular, one that is used for work.
Nice. Okay, and we're talking about Italian folk songs today.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. And Amanda, how did you get into the band?
Well, Anthony and I have been collaborators in the Cleveland, Ohio area for a number of years. And friends in the music scene. We actually worked together on some more classical, Baroque folk projects. And Anthony was sharing with me about this composition project that he was doing, highlighting the music, the folk songs of Italy. And it was of interest to me. And so he shared more about it and passed along some of his tracks and invited me along for the ride. And it's been really great ever since then.
Awesome. And Anthony, can you tell us who else is in the band? Who are the other members?
Yeah, so the band is 6 people. It is myself on drums and percussion. Also, I do some background vocals. Amanda Powell, as you know, is the lead vocalist. Then we have Clay Colley, who plays accordion and piano. And we have Dan Bruce, who plays guitar. We have Ian Kinnamon, who plays upright bass. And Tommy Lehman, who plays the trumpet and flugelhorn.
And how did all of them sort of collaborate with you all? How did you guys get together? What's your origin story of how everything gelled together?
So each of these people I've known for at least a few years. Ian is the most recent person that I met. I met him when I was doing my graduate degree in composition, which is kind of where this idea of this band was birthed. And being a sideman for 12 years, I've had a lot of opportunity to network with other musicians in the area. And when I decided to go for really putting this band together, I kind of had a short list of people in my head that I knew, one, not only are they fantastic musicians, but they also bring such a great vibe. And they also have the personalities that I wanted for this music.
That's awesome. And I often tell my listeners that's kind of how Allegro sort of came about as well. It was a college thesis project that I tested out at a festival, and after one performance, we had so many bookings after just that one day that people were like, oh, can you do our family reunion? Can you do this festival? Can you come to my birthday party? And one performance turned into about 30 years now. So it kind of got out of hand, but I'm thankful for it. And I'm sure you guys are going to have a long journey as well together. And I've been listening to some of your music as well, and I'm excited. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about the different tracks that you have? I know, Amanda, your voice is amazing on these tracks that I'm listening to. Tell us a little bit more about the styles that you're doing.
Thank you. I'm happy to share a little bit. Anthony really is the inspiration and expert around all of this music. Anthony can tell you more, but what he has taught me is that, there was an ethnomusicologist named Alan Lomax who traveled throughout Italy for 6 months and went into all these different regions collecting folk songs and recording them. He even went on to boats. He went out into the field. And so Anthony has taken these field recordings and created his own compositional material based on and inspired by those compositions. Now, for my part, which is the vocals, I've gone back. I've looked at Anthony's wonderful arrangements and compositions, and then I've gone back to the original field recordings to study not only the nuance and the way that people are singing, but also the regional dialects. And, you hear influences of Middle Eastern folk singing in some, there's all sorts of different styles that are being used. So my job in this project is to listen and gather information and then apply it to my expertise, which is the voice. I've studied folk styles and traveled quite a lot in the world. And my roots are in jazz and folk music, and then I studied classical music and sing a lot of Baroque music. So Baroque music from 1600s, 1700s Europe, is all about storytelling and emotion, and that is the same thing that we find in the folk experience. And so those two things really work well for me in using the vocal technique, matching different styles, and then also really trying to get into the heart of the story of what the songs are trying to express.
And the dance is the same way. The dance expresses a story. We're conveying a story, and we're storytellers on stage. Only we just don't have words. We have our body movements to share those emotions and thoughts and prayers and whatever we're trying to communicate with the audience. So I commend you for doing all of that research, because I know what that's like, and that is not an easy task. But that's one of the pieces of advice I always give the next generation, is to do your research and try to be eclectic. Don't just stick to one style. Try some other styles, and it always will strengthen the one style that you're really good at. Anthony, any advice for the next generation or life lesson that you guys have kind of learned through this process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to touch back on something real quick that Amanda said, which is, when it came to selecting the people for this group, I don't want to single you out, Amanda, but that I realized quickly that the vocalist was going to be one of the most important parts of this group, and the dynamic and the thorough research that she brings to her craft is what inspired me to ask her to do this. And so I guess we can kind of segue into the advice in saying that regardless of what you do with your craft as a young person or as an aspiring artist, I think it's important to have focus and a constant refining of what you do, because right now it's so overwhelming, the amount of content that is being produced on a daily basis by incredible artists all over the world. But the temptation is to do a little bit of everything and then kind of be mediocre at a bunch of things instead of really focusing your passion and your vision through kind of one thing. Now, I'm not saying it has to be just one thing, but I do think that we learn a lot about ourselves when we force ourselves to really focus in on one aspect of our artistry. And I think that would be the one thing that I tell my students, and I wish I could have told myself years earlier, because I think I would have grown a little bit quicker. But it's a balance, because when you're young, you definitely want to expose yourself to a ton of content and a ton of different ideas. But then when you start feeling that pull in your chest or your heart or soul, wherever you feel it, maybe it's in your head or your elbow, whatever, that's your brain and heart trying to tell you, like, this is important. You need to chase after this. And so oftentimes what students do is they say, oh yeah, I love that song, instead of, wow, I like this song so much, I need to know everything about this song. I need to know what the chords are. I need to know what the melody is. I need to know what kind of intervals are being used. And I want to know what kind of scales they're using. I want to know who's playing in the band. I want to know what other records that person's on. I want to know who he played with, where he grew up, who he studied with. You know what I'm saying? And then it's this snowball effect that is unstoppable. And it becomes such a deeper connection with the art form than just, oh, I like that song.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's kind of what happened with me with Italian folk dance. I wanted to learn it because my grandparents came from Italy, all four of them. And I thought, well, gosh, I should know more about my own heritage. And I loved dance. I majored in dance. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll try that as my focus for my college thesis project. And you're right. I wanted to know every song. I wanted to know every dance. I wanted to know all 20 regions. What does each dance look like from each region of Italy? Is it different? Do the costumes change? Does the tempo change? Do they change directions or besides tempo, but levels, reaching high, doing groundwork. And so you're right. I wanted to collect them all. I wanted to know more about it in every single aspect. Guys, let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about why it is important to learn maybe more about cultural dance and cultural music and how that, changes our lives. All right. We'll be right back with Anthony and Amanda. Welcome back, everyone. We're here with Anthony and Amanda. They have an amazing band. Anthony, tell us again the name of your band, and then we're going to talk a little bit about cultural music.
Yeah, the name of the group is Alla Boara, and our focus is to bring new life and recognition to Italian folk music.
So from both of you, why do you think it's so important to study cultural music or cultural dance, whether it's Italian or Spanish or French, just any kind of cultural music in general? What do you think that brings to the next generation?
I'd love to hear your response, Amanda.
I think that art is a beautiful way for us humans to express the deepest longings and feelings and experiences of our lives, things that even surpass words often. And when I dig deeper and deeper into folk music, I find these rich offerings that tell the story of humanity. The deeper that you dig into, say, Mongolian folk songs or Colombian folk songs or Italian folk songs, you find more and more commonalities. You know, you find these like musical differences and nuances that are unique to each tradition, but you find these commonalities, lullabies that mothers sing to their children or that fathers sing to their children, songs of work to just get through the slog of the day, songs of lament and of excitement for new love. So I personally think it's important to study folk music to understand our own sense of humanity, to grow as humans, and to acknowledge the ancestors that have come before us. But I like what Anthony does with this music because I feel like he goes and he listens and he takes all this in, and then as he shared, he brings new life to it. And so it's like the next generation of sharing these stories and songs from a new lens. And the lens is, from Anthony as a, Italian American. Anthony has traveled a lot in Italy. He speaks Italian. He speaks Italian with his children. So it's like I get to see this living, breathing experience also as Anthony's friend of this culture being lived out in a new context through a different lens. So all of these things are why I'm really interested in multicultural folk music.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. No, that's amazing. I mean, for me, I think it's been a very similar experience of one of the most rewarding things for me has been that this is the first time I ever felt this connected to my musical heritage as an Italian American. And if any of you listening are Italian American, you know that we tend to take great pride in that, but we don't necessarily know what it means or with the details of the culture behind it. We know the American version of what being Italian is, and that's very cool. But this was the first time that I've been able to take great pride in the music of Italy. I just have never connected very fully to more of the classical repertoire of Italy. And so when I stumbled upon these recordings of Alan Lomax, I was just kind of blown away by the diversity in the soundscapes and the textures that I would have never otherwise really correlated with Italian folk music. And so that to me has been really rewarding to know that our historical musical roots, regardless of what ethnic heritage you have, are still a fertile ground for creative cultivation.
Yeah, you're right. The texture of a lot of the music that I listen to when I'm choreographing or trying to reenact or redo an authentic folk dance, I wouldn't have thought of. It's very organic and refreshing at the same time. And I try to emulate the same feeling through movement. Let it be earthy and untamed in the southern part of Italy, and yet a little bit more refined as you move up the boot and to the top part of Italy. So it's really not as organic, and it's kind of really polished. But the deeper you go in the south, it's not as polished, yet very beautiful. And I like that it's a little bit improv and untamed and organic. It feels very fresh to me. So that's my take on it too. And every time I feel like we join hands in a circle to start a dance, that is the moment that I think, gosh, how many other people in the past have done the same thing? So you really do connect with those ancestors.
Yeah, that's very deep. That's very
and
cool.
in a really tactile way. And so when I tell the dancers that, they think, hey, I'm a part of history. I said, you are. You're living history. So it's one of those things that I think the next generation should jump into and try to experience all colors of the flag, right? The green, the white, and the red. And part of that might be diving into a different kind of music or a different kind of dance that really they can connect with and find out more about who they are or who they're not, you know? So guys,
Absolutely.
where can everybody listen to your music? Where can we go to find your band and know more about you?
Yeah, well, we're coming out with our first album in October. So that will be the whole thing that we recorded back, gosh, now in February of 2021. Been a long time coming, but some exciting things in store. So that's why it's been taking a little while for it to come out. And right now we have one single that has been released called Cavanti C'è. And it's a great example, actually, of why Alan Lomax's archival work was so important, because this is a song that they don't use anymore in Italy. And as far as I know, this recording that he has of it is really the last remnant that they have of that song. So
Wow.
it's not used anymore. You can't find it anymore except for on this field recording. And it's a gorgeous song. It was used for Olive Gathering. And I think what Amanda was hinting at earlier when she was talking about how these stories and human experiences are found throughout this music, this was used for Olive Gathering, but and what's amazing is that it's a love song. It's this beautiful love song. It's not like they were going around singing, you know, grab an olive and put it in the basket or something
Right.
like that, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like a beautiful story that goes along with just these people that were gathering olives. And I find that fascinating, but also really beautiful that they had this specific story that was used for this very specific period in which they were gathering olives.
So that brings up a good point that if we don't recreate some of this music or listen to this music or teach these songs, they're going to disappear on us.
Yeah.
So how can we as listeners, what can we do to stop that from happening? How can we make these things not disappear from our world so that the next generation can keep listening to it?
Well, you can buy the Alla Boara CD once it's released in October, and enjoy an Italian American, Anthony Taddeo's fresh take on Italian folk music. And, you know, one of the things that Anthony does often at our live shows, which is another thing that, you know, Anthony can mention, we have some live shows coming up in different parts of the country, you know, some things in the works. And so, you know, one of the best ways to stay in touch is to subscribe to the email list. Anthony does a great job of staying in touch with our friends around the world. And Anthony always invites folks at our live shows to connect with their own heritage. And so regardless if you're Italian American or you identify or your ancestors came from a different part of the world, or even if you have no idea where your ancestors come from, whatever cultural art speaks to you, dive deep. Because it's just more people learning about these wonderful art forms and sharing about that really is how we continue the story.
Right. Just continue talking about it. That's why I wanted to do it on the podcast and have you guys on. Just let's keep having these conversations about these beautiful songs and dances that we enjoy and that I'm hoping that the next generation can enjoy. We need to leave our little footprints and dance prints behind so they can step into it and keep singing, keep dancing along. What about your website?
Yeah, it's just allaboara.com. If you're curious about how to spell that, it's spelled like Alla Boara. So if you can't roll your R's, there's grace here. You can say it that way too, and I won't be mad. It's ALLABOARA.com. And you can sign up for the email list. There are links to the single, which is also on Spotify and iTunes and YouTube and all those things. So it's the best way to stay in touch with us, though, for sure. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. So you can find us just by searching Alla Boara in any of those places.
Too, we have a cool new video out.
Oh, yes.
That was recorded by Take One Productions. Is that what it's? Can you tell us about that, Anthony? Because
The One Take series. There's a local Cleveland sound engineer that's putting together this wonderful series called the One Take series, and it's one beautiful stereo ribbon microphone and one camera. So we're kind of all situated around the camera like they would back in the day when they were making records with just one microphone or just one
camera lens. Wow, that's really cool too, to really take it back full circle in a sense. I love that idea. And I can't wait to watch more about that. I'm going to include the website and all of your information in our podcast notes so that everybody can click on that and sign up for your newsletter and follow you guys. What is your next place you're going to be? Is it Cleveland or?
Yeah, our next show is going to be April 16th at the Bop Stop in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a jazz venue, and it is going to also be a wine tasting, which is going to be fun. So we'll have to be a little careful, but we'll be okay. We'll wait. We'll save the wine tasting on our end, maybe toward the latter half of the concert.
Hey, more people will come if there's wine.
That's right.
So pour on, I say, pour on. Okay, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today on the dance floor. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm your host, Anna Harsh. And until next time, keep moving on the dance floor.